getting into coloring, kind of. So we're gonna see how well she does here. How well she does while I do a video. I'm having to get creative. As she's getting older, she is obviously wanting to do more things, especially with that, you know, require my attention. So, and usually I try to get her to be napping when I'm working. So then that makes it a little bit more tricky to be able to do a video without her yelling and screaming in the background. Anyways, we'll see how she does. I apologize for not doing a video. I think it was last Friday. Yeah, it was my 16th wedding anniversary last Friday, and my husband and I went out to dinner, and it was so great. I wasn't feeling great still. I still had like this cold going on. I'm feeling better now, but my voice was already kind of like starting to go. I felt like Friday afternoon by the time I finished work, and I didn't have it in me to make a video. So here I am Monday, feeling better. Got some really good sleep over the weekend, and yeah, it was great. Got to see my parents yesterday. They came over for dinner and just had some kids' games, and yeah, it was a good weekend. So, feeling excited for Thanksgiving this week. I wanted to ask those of you that are joining or that will be joining if you had any questions, and you can ask any questions, really, obviously, but any questions specific to the holidays. I know not everyone celebrates Thanksgiving, or at least Thanksgiving this week. I know Canadians celebrated last month, correct? I think. But if you have any questions with Christmas coming up, or Hanukkah, or any holidays that you celebrate in the next couple of months, if you had any questions regarding your recovery and that, I know that for holidays for me in the past were always filled with anxiety. And I hate to admit this, but a lot of dread. Because why? Because it really interrupted my routines, right? If we were going out of town somewhere for the holidays, that meant that I couldn't do, these long, intense workouts. I didn't have my own food, my safe foods. If we weren't traveling, the gyms would close on holidays, and it would stress me out. And I had kids, and it would be weird if I was like trying to get a workout in on Christmas Day, but I was always torn, like couldn't be fully engaged in like the joy and excitement of Christmas because I was so worried about either trying to get a workout in or accepting that I wasn't going to get one in, but then being so anxious. And it's just such a crappy way to live, I feel like. So if those of you that are in active recovery, going into the holidays, I'm just curious how you're feeling about it. Are you feeling confident? Sometimes you kind of do have to go in with a game plan. I've talked to some clients in this last week, or I guess last week, about, and I talked briefly about this, I think in a video last week too, is like, how do I manage like weird meal times when we're eating with family? If we're eating at 3 o'clock, is that a lunch or is that dinner? Or what is that? And I'm like, just consider it an extra meal that day. If you're in recovery, that's a good thing, right? It's not a big deal. So what? You eat a little bit more. So I hope that you can try to have some flexibility. But when I say that, I don't mean have some flexibility in that you're going to err on eating less. Oh, I'll just be flexible and let's miss lunch. No, that's not what I mean. Be flexible and be like, oh, I'm just going to eat lunch and I'm going to eat dinner and I'm going to be just fine eating an extra meal at 3 or 4, a big, nice holiday meal. Another thing that I wanted to talk about that I was talking about with a client last week, and I talk a lot about this idea of like abundance, food abundance, food abundance, food abundance. And I use this analogy of if you grew up, some of you listening may relate, if you grew up and you did not have a lot of money as a child, very, very, very poor family that you grew up in, and it was almost hard to make ends meet. And sometimes you were going with very little food and didn't have the resources that you needed to, have proper clothing or a warm house or whatever it was, you always felt very, very deprived and didn't have a lot of money, right? Then let's say you kind of grow up and you get a normal average salary. You're still likely going to be really tight with money. You're probably still going to be very, very frugal and always kind of stressed out and worried about money. However, let's say you won the lottery and you got millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars, billions of dollars, right? Just all this money. You're probably, even though you had that very, very poor childhood, you're probably going to start warming up to the idea that you probably have enough money. You probably don't have to skimp. You probably don't have to, closely budget every single cent that you spend. you're going to feel a little bit more relaxed around money, right? You know where I'm going with this. It's going to be very, very similar for someone who's had a restrictive past with food, right? So if you have had an eating disorder and you've had, months or years or decades or a lifetime of restriction, you're not just going to be able to fall right into this normal or average salary, aka this normal way of eating. It's not going to work. Your body's still going to be obsessed with food. Your body's still going to want to eat so much food. So what do you have to do? You have to teach your body that food is abundant by your actions, by giving it tons and tons of food, millions and millions and billions of dollars, right? In the form of food. You've got to give it a lot of food. And over time, it's eventually going to be able to relax and settle in to the idea that there is plenty of food around. Okay. I think Hazel's eating a cram. So you have to trust that process. When I keep telling you to, sit down to a meal and have tons and tons of food in front of you, or eat, 4 huge meals on Christmas Day. It's okay. That's fine. That's good. That's good. You've got to teach your body that there's plenty of food in your environment. And then over time, as you do that and you're consistent with it for a period of time, eventually your body is going to realize maybe we don't have to obsess about food every single minute of the day. Maybe we don't have to calculate, and maybe we don't have to, plan out every single thing that we're going to eat, because we're not in, a scarcity anymore. We're not in a famine. We've got tons and tons of food. So hopefully that analogy helps some of you to understand why I'm always saying make food really, really abundant. Even if it feels so over the top and like way too much food. Well, good, great. That just means you're going to get out of that famine state of mind much faster. So if anyone has any questions, sometimes my videos don't let me read the questions, and then I don't see them until I end, and then someone will say I wasn't able to, like, your questions weren't showing. So if that's the case, I don't have anything planned to say today, so that might be my message today. If you're in recovery and you are still being careful, you still find yourself watching the clock, you still find yourself planning out your day and trying to balance things out, you still find yourself feeling anxious or fearful of a holiday coming up because you may perhaps eat more, check yourself and be like, hold on a second, but isn't that the goal? Isn't that the goal? Isn't that what I'm supposed to be doing? Aren't I supposed to be teaching myself, my body, through my actions, that there's food all over the place? So I should be eating 10 big meals a day, because the faster that I can do this, the faster I can feel more normal around food. Okay, someone said they had a question. It looks like they are coming up. Irene, I have a question. Nellie, hello. Okay, ask your question, Irene. We are ready for it. And while we're waiting, okay, here we go. Okay, Fandom Central. What if after 7 months I still have extreme hunger? I'll admit I have had many relapses. So maybe that's why. Oh, what's happened here? So maybe that's why, but it freaks me out that it's been so long. That is definitely why Fandom is Central. I haven't been gaining weight for like 6 months, but I'm still ravenous. Well, you kind of just answered your question there. You've had extreme hunger for 7 months, but you've had many relapses. What did I just say before this, right? Consistency. You have to consistently be feeding your body tons and tons of food in order for it to not feel insanely ravenous and obsessed with food and wanting to eat every second of the day. So if you're doing that for a week and then you're taking a few days off and then you're doing that, recommitting on a Monday morning like today, and then you're going to go hard, and then next week you're going to pull back because you got scared, and then you're going to go hard again, you see why you're still having this extreme hunger. Now, some people are consistent with recovery eating and they still have extreme hunger 7 months later, and that's completely fine. Everyone's body is going to be different. So there's nothing wrong with that. But in your case, you specified that you have been relapsing during those 7 months. So of course, you're still going to be ravenous and have extreme hunger. Irene, I wanted to ask about athletes who exercise a lot. How soon can they start exercising again, and can they get back to their normal routines? Well, so athletes exercise a lot. How soon can they start exercising again? I mean, there's so many variables that go into that, but the one blanket statement I can say is it absolutely depends on your mental state. So some questions to ask yourself before you get back into exercise, regardless if you're a competitive athlete or just someone that had an exercise compulsion. Can you go days and days and days without exercising and not have anxiety? Are you still linking food and exercise together in your brain? So on days when you do exercise, do you feel like you have more freedom to eat more? And this is where it gets tricky, sometimes that'll be the case. Or on those days when you're exercising, do you find that you're a lot more careful and restrictive and orthorexic and kind of in your head and struggling to be able to actually really eat what it is that you want? Either one of those extremes, feeling like, oh, I get to eat more because I worked out, or ooh, because I worked out, now I suddenly don't want chocolate, and maybe I should just have that healthier, and you start overthinking things. Both of those are really big red flags that you're not ready to go back to exercise. Um, Obviously, not being flexible with exercise, not feeling or trying to feel like when you get back into exercise, okay, I have this new schedule. I'm going to follow this exactly like this and this and this. And you get really rigid with it really fast. Or you're still really having a hard time with your body and the changes that have happened. And now you're suddenly trying to, tell yourself that you're ready for exercise prematurely because you're going to try to change your body through exercise. So there's just a lot of variables that go into that. I'd have to talk to someone and ask them those questions or answer them yourself based off of what I just asked you. And that should give you a pretty good idea. That being said, if you've had an exercise compulsion, you've been a month or two off, probably not enough time. I'm just going to say that. Probably not enough time. I'd give yourself at least, depending on the person and the severity, 6 at the least, and 12 months would be probably better, and potentially possibly longer. It's just too hard to give a timeline on that, but a couple months typically is not long enough for your brain to rewire that. Okay, let's see. Okay, Nelly, I'm almost weight restored and look healthy, but I have still tons of stuff to rewire, foods and else. I feel that it's too late to rewire by eating unrestricted. Should I still go and eat a lot? Well, Nelly, I think you know the answer to that. I think I'm going to say yes, of course you should. Going backwards and trying to lose the weight that you may have gained in a disordered way is honestly the worst idea I can possibly think about. I can't think of a worse idea than that. And I'm not even saying that because logically it makes no sense. I'm saying that because I've actually seen people try to do that so many times, way more than I like to, way more than I wish I had seen. But people will do that. They'll try to lose the weight because they did it in a disordered way, and then they're right back where they started the first time. Because guess what? As you lose that weight, your brain gets all crazy again. It gets all crazy again. It's not like you keep that sort of logic thinking that you're starting to get as you gain weight, and then you lose the weight and you're still there. Your brain just reverts back to this state of like mush where you can't think straight. It doesn't work. I've never seen it work. I've never seen someone lose the initial weight that they gained in recovery and then properly started eating unrestrictedly. They just do the same thing. They just inch their way back up, and then they think, oh crap, I did it again. And then they go back and then they do it again. And I'm sorry, I shouldn't be laughing, but really it's insanity. Please don't do that. Hopefully that was clear enough answer, Nelly. Just start where you are. You're fine. Your body is going to figure it out. It has a set point range that it wants to be at. Genetically, it's not going to change anything if you just keep on going. I know it will feel scary, but even better to rewire, right? That you don't just rewire when you're at your lowest, or you just rewire when you have all this weight to gain. You can rewire and you can eat unrestrictedly at any size. Okay. Thank you for answering. You're welcome. Nelly, eating unrestricted has become harder during the last few weeks, I'm assuming you mean? Yeah, so just because it's getting harder doesn't mean that you don't need to do it. If anything, that means you need to do it even more so. And the more that you contemplate it, the more you think about it, and the more you obsess about the weight that you may have already gained, the harder this is going to be. So just dive in. Just be like, you know what? This has to happen. I have to recover. If you made that decision that you want to recover, I may as well just get on with this. Okay. Let's see. No, they're unlinked, but can I exercise again like I used to? I'm close to full recovery and I don't want to change my body. I don't know how you used to, and I don't want you to write in the comments how you used to, because that may be triggering for other people who are actively, abstaining from exercise now. But if it was really intense, or an outlooker would look in on what you were doing and be like, this girl's crazy, this is too much, then obviously no, you never return back to that. If you've properly rewired, though, you usually don't have any kind of desire to do that. Again, unless you're like a competitive athlete, that would be a different situation, and I'd have to be talking to that person to kind of know their entire journey leading up to this question. But I certainly didn't return back to what I used to do before I recovered. Absolutely not. That would have been really, really disordered for me and not healthy at all. When I started back up with exercise, I genuinely was doing it for the right reason. I wanted to do it to feel good. I wanted to do it for that, the mental health benefits. Once you don't have that compulsion anymore, there are mental health benefits. When you still do, there are not. It's the opposite. It's very detrimental to your health. Okay, very clear. You got to understand that. But I just did it to feel good, and I did things that I enjoyed. And if I didn't enjoy it, I didn't do it. So, let's see. M's. I'm in the UK, and here we seem to be stuck on BMI. I was very overweight and went from binge eating to anorexia due to having 20 pounds of excess skin due to losing 17 stone. I'm in a healthy BMI. So, can't access inpatient. I know that's such a bummer. I'm so sorry. It's pretty similar in the US as well. If you don't meet a certain weight criteria, that a lot of times you aren't going to qualify for inpatient. And that absolutely sucks. And I'm so sorry. Next best thing though, if you feel like inpatient would have been the best thing for you to at least be able to rehabilitate some, the next best thing would be to find someone that you do trust, whether that be a coach or I mean, I would say therapist or dietitian, and they can be helpful in some ways, but as far as truly understanding the eating disorder, I don't know how hands-on they're going to be with that regard. I don't want to say that no therapist or dietitian could be helpful, but oftentimes they kind of miss the mark. They'll be really helpful in helping you talk through other issues that you have in your life or things that you're struggling with or other mental illnesses such as depression and anxiety. But specifically for eating disorder recovery, I obviously am biased in saying this, and I'm not even saying hire me, but I think somebody that's had lived experience that's in that setting as a coach would be the most helpful, the next best, maybe even the best if you feel like you can do it on your own. Let's see. Rihanna, do you have any experience with bulimia? I cycle between restriction and binging and purging, so the thought of eating unrestricted terrifies me, going back to binging and purging. I mean, it's natural for that to terrify you, but recognize that that's your pattern and make a decision that you're not going to allow that to happen. I get that question a lot. Well, I have a history of bulimia, so you're telling me to eat unrestrictedly, which feels like a binge, and then if I binge, I'm just going to purge. And it's like, hold on, that last part though. If I binge, I'm just going to purge. Well, you just made that decision right there before you even started that you're going to purge if you binge. No, you have to make that decision that no matter how much I eat, no matter how much it might feel like a binge, this isn't coming out of me. I'm not compensating in any way. I'm not purging in the form of throwing up, in the form of movement or exercise, in the form of starving myself after. You're not doing that, right? So once you understand what has to happen in order to recover, you do need to eat unrestrictedly and you cannot purge or compensate. Then you have a decision to make. Am I going to commit to this and am I going to follow through? And you absolutely have the ability to do that. I truly believe that, regardless of your past with bulimia. Irene, I mean, is it possible for someone to exercise well after fully recover without going back to anorexia? Okay, Irene. That's a good question. And I would like to say yes, but I haven't seen anyone that has gone back to in high levels of exercise. Again, more than just kind of a normal average amount of exercise. I haven't seen that go well. Typically, it does revert back into some kind of compulsion, maybe years and years down the road. And if you're doing it for the right reasons, again, if you're like in a sport that you're very competitive with, I can see maybe how that would work, but I just haven't seen when people really rewire that compulsion, they don't have that desire to push their bodies to that limit anymore, especially if you have a past of compulsive exercise, you've been there and you've done that. And it's kind of, I'm speaking from personal experience. I just can't wrap my head around how I'd ever want to do that again. So maybe that's maybe I'm answering that naively based off of my own experience, but, again, I just feel a little uneasy answering that question on a live because I would really rather talk to you personally before I give you an answer there, a definitive answer. Nelly, thank you, Becky. I needed those words kick in the butt. Here we go again. Okay. Lily, I feel like, hi, Lily. So, I know the little, is that a cat? I can't tell, but I know this is Lily. I feel like I've lost all hope to ever recover. I'm basically back at square one now. Before we started working, and I can't at all fathom ever gaining so much weight again. I feel so desperate. At the same time, I'm so numb that I almost feel indifferent about the fact that I'm fully back into my ed. I just can't gather enough momentum, motivation anymore. I Sorry for being so negative. That's okay, Lily. You're being honest. I completely can understand where you are right now. You gave it, a good effort, never were able to fully commit to the, requirements in order to recover, which were fully and completely eat unrestrictedly and stop the exercise completely and all the movement. You'd have little bursts and then you kind of run back and burst and run back. And I don't want to get into too much detail about this Lily that I've worked with and her experience. However, she would agree that she never was able to, or I know that she would have been able to. She let the fear of weight gain get to her. And that's a perfect example of allowing that fear of weight gain to keep you stuck. And now Lily is in a place where she does feel hopeless and she does feel really frustrated. And I feel for you. I absolutely understand that. I went through many, many attempts at recovery prior to that last attempt of recovery where I would really feel like I was giving it my all, but I would never fully let go and just accept the weight gain. And I would be in the exact same position that you're in now. What's the point? I'm never going to do this. I don't care anymore. I'm just going to live with my eating disorder the rest of my life because I've tried and I failed and I can't do this. I'm obviously too weak to recover. And Lily, that is not true. That's what I'm going to say. That is not true. You absolutely can. Do not give up. Maybe schedule a session. I don't know, but maybe we need to talk, Lily, because that breaks my heart that you're there and you don't have to be. You are one of the strongest people I know, and you let that dang fear of weight gain from the eating disorder get to you. You're so much better than that. You have so much to offer. I know that. Okay, Julie, the menopause seems to have quite suddenly increased my weight, even though I'm restricting. So now I'm really scared to go unrestricted. I thought I could do it when I was slim, but now I'm curvy. Well, curvy's wonderful, right? Most women are curvy. Majority of the average woman is curvy. We're meant to be curvy. We birth children out of those nice curvy hips. So I don't mean to be insensitive, but truly it's okay to be curvy. It's going to be different. I did a video on this a ways back. Just because your body looks different now doesn't mean it's bad. Just because you gained weight or just because you gained curves or just because your face is filled out, it doesn't mean it's bad. You've just labeled it as bad. You've just equated that with, oh my gosh, this is negative and this is the end of my life and I am worthless now and I have nothing to offer because this has happened. And couldn't be further from the truth. That's where, okay, now I've finally allowed my body to be what it's going to be. Now I can just be the person that I want to be. Now I can let my true self shine through and I don't have to worry and obsess so much about my size. So it sounds like there's some work to do there, Julie, with body image and accepting the change that are and will occur in your body. Okay. Any tips? This is the last question. I've got to go. Any tips on dealing with shame from eating and body changes, weight gain? Any tips on dealing with shame from eating and body changes, weight gain? Yeah, when I started feeling that shame as my body changed, especially like, with the holidays coming, for those of you that haven't seen or these people for a long time, I remember like my first holidays after my body had changed a lot and I was still in recovery, feeling like, okay, I can make a choice. I can feel really ashamed and embarrassed and try to hide my body, or I can just show up and be like, this is me and I'm getting on with my life and just own it. And something that a mantra that I continued to remind myself was, I am not somebody who conforms. I am not somebody who conforms. I am not somebody who conforms. And I had to keep repeating that to myself over and over and over again because me, Becky, without an eating disorder, is not somebody who conforms. My eating disorder made me somebody who conformed to basically everything. I lived in fear. I lived in a place of especially fear of judgment. I wanted to be accepted. I lived for compliments from people. And I felt like I was betraying myself and becoming this person that just conformed to whatever someone, said was the latest and greatest diet or the way you should be looking. And then there I was chasing that goal. And I just feel like I loved when I took on that mantra, not that I believed it from day one, but I wanted to believe it. So I showed up to those holiday parties and I showed up with, friends at dinner or whatever it was. And it was just like, I'm not conforming anymore. Ooh, you might feel uncomfortable with my new body. I'm so sorry, being a little bit sarcastic, not really saying that out loud, but in my head, just kind of like, think what you want. I'm done. So that's how I dealt with the shame. I don't know if that's the best advice, but dig deep and think about, who are you really? Are you really somebody who conforms and just goes along with whatever diet culture is telling you the latest and greatest thing is? Or are you somebody who is like, I have a lot to offer. I have a lot to offer, a lot more than just my body and a lot more than just worrying about being accepted. I'm going to move on with my life and I'm going to show up in this body. Okay. with that, I have to go. It's about time to start working. Okay.